I never imagined that surviving 3 tours in Afghanistan would be easier than surviving Thanksgiving dinner with my own daughter. But there I was, standing in the driveway of my daughter Rebecca's house in Scottsdale, Arizona, watching her close the door in my face while my 2 grandchildren pressed their hands against the living room window, crying. It was November 23rd, 2023. I was 56 years old, and I'd just been told I was no longer welcome in my daughter's home. The home I'd helped her buy with my VA disability settlement 4 years earlier, when she and her husband Derek were drowning in debt from his failed real estate ventures. The morning had started normally enough. I'd driven up from my 1-bedroom apartment in Phoenix, brought pumpkin pies from the bakery Rebecca loved as a kid, wore the sport coat she'd bought me last Christmas. I thought maybe this year would be different. Maybe this year Derek wouldn't make comments about me being a freeloader. Maybe this year my daughter would remember who I was before the war turned me into someone she was ashamed of. I was wrong. Derek answered the door with that smile he reserves for people he's about to insult. "Colonel Brennan," he said, because he knew I hated being called Colonel after I retired. Always so punctual. Must be that military discipline. Still got the nightmares, or did the VA finally fix you? I should have left right then. Should have turned around, gotten back in my 2012 Ford Ranger and driven home. But Rebecca appeared behind him, and for just a second I saw my little girl. The one who used to wait by the window every time I came home on leave. The one who cried at my promotion ceremony and told everyone her daddy was a hero. "Dad," she said, and I heard the warning in her voice. "Come in, please." The house was full of Derek's family. His parents, his sister and her husband, their kids. My side of the family was just me. Rebecca's mother died when she was 8, breast cancer, while I was on my 2nd deployment. My brother stopped talking to me 15 years ago over something I don't even remember anymore. I had nobody except Rebecca and her 2 kids, Emma, who was 7, and Carson, who was 5. Emma ran to me when I walked in. "Grandpa Jack," she yelled and hugged my legs. "You came. Mom said you might not come." "Why would I miss Thanksgiving with my favorite people?" I said, picking her up. She was getting so big. 7 years old and already reading chapter books, Rebecca told me on our last phone call 3 weeks ago. Derek cleared his throat. "Emma, honey, go play with your cousins. The adults need to talk." Something in his tone made my stomach drop. That voice. I'd heard it before, from officers who were about to deliver bad news. From doctors who were about to tell you your buddy didn't make it. Rebecca wouldn't look at me. She was staring at the floor, her arms crossed, and I realized she'd been crying. Her eyes were red, puffy. "What's going on?" I asked. Derek's father, a man named Roland who'd made his money in car dealerships and never let anyone forget it, stepped forward. "Jack, we've been discussing the family situation, and we think it's time for some honest conversation." I looked at Rebecca. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. "What situation?" I said. Derek put his arm around Rebecca's shoulders, proprietary, like he was claiming her. "The financial situation, Jack. Rebecca's been under a lot of stress, the kids' private school tuition, the mortgage, my business investments, and she's been supporting you for years now." Supporting me? I felt heat rising in my chest, that old anger I'd learned to control in therapy. "I've never asked Rebecca for a dime." "You haven't had to ask," Roland said. "You've just taken the money she gave you for that apartment deposit, the car repairs she paid for last year, the medical bills she helped with. Those were loans," I said quietly. "I've paid back every penny." "Have you?" Derek pulled out his phone, started scrolling. "Because I have a different record, $7,000 over the past 2 years, plus the $35,000 you guilt-tripped us into giving you for your back surgery that the VA wouldn't cover." "That surgery kept me from being paralyzed," I said. "And I didn't guilt-trip anyone," Rebecca offered. Finally, my daughter spoke. "Dad," she said, and her voice was so tired. "Derek's right. We can't keep doing this. You're a financial burden. You're an emotional burden. Every time you come here, you bring your war stories, your trauma, your problems. Emma's having nightmares because you told her about the bombing in Kandahar. She asked me about my medals," I protested. "I was trying to help her with a school project about heroes. You told a 6-year-old about watching your friends die," Derek snapped. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I opened my mouth to respond, but Rebecca held up her hand. "We've made a decision, Dad. We think it's best if you don't come around anymore. At least not for a while. The kids need stability. Derek and I need to focus on our marriage. And you need to figure out your life without depending on us." The room was spinning. Without depending on them. I'd raised Rebecca alone from age 8, worked 2 jobs while going to night school for my degree so I could become an officer and give her a better life. Missed her high school graduation because I was in Helmand Province. Missed her wedding because I was in Walter Reed getting shrapnel removed from my spine. "I gave you the down payment for this house," I said, and I hated how my voice shook. $32,000 from my disability settlement. The money I got for taking an IED blast that killed 2 of my men. Rebecca's face hardened. "And we're grateful, Dad. But that doesn't mean you get to hold it over our heads forever. That doesn't mean you get to trauma dump on our children. That doesn't mean you get to show up here and make everyone uncomfortable with your mood swings and your stories about war." I looked around the room. Derek's family was watching like this was entertainment, some reality show about dysfunctional families. Not one of them was on my side. Not one of them thought this was wrong. "I need you to leave," Rebecca said. "Please, just go. Can I say goodbye to the kids?" Derek shook his head. "I think it's better if you don't. Clean break, you know. We'll tell them you had to go, that you had somewhere important to be. They're my grandchildren, and they're our children," Derek said. "Our decision." I looked at Rebecca one more time, searching for any sign of the girl I'd raised. The girl who used to write me letters every day when I was deployed, who used to sleep with my old army jacket when I was overseas, who told me on her 16th birthday that I was her hero. She was gone. In her place was a stranger who looked like her, but didn't know me at all. I picked up my pies from the kitchen counter and walked out. The last thing I heard was Carson calling, "Grandpa, where are you going?" and Rebecca telling him, "Nowhere, sweetie. Grandpa has to work." I sat in my truck for 20 minutes in that driveway, trying to stop shaking. My hands were trembling so badly I couldn't get the key in the ignition. This was how it felt after firefights, after losing men, after those moments when your brain couldn't process what had just happened. I'd survived ambushes, survived IED blasts, survived watching my best friend bleed out in my arms because the medevac couldn't get to us in time. But sitting in that driveway, kicked out of my daughter's life on Thanksgiving, I wasn't sure I'd survive this. Finally, I started the truck and drove. I didn't go home. Couldn't face my empty apartment with its bare walls and second-hand furniture. Instead, I drove to the only place that ever made sense to me anymore, the VA hospital in Phoenix. The parking lot was nearly empty, holiday skeleton crew. I sat there as the sun went down, watching the building where I'd spent so many hours in therapy, in group sessions, talking about the war, about coming home, about trying to be a person again after years of being a soldier. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, always told me that healing wasn't linear, that some days would be harder than others, that the people who loved us before the war might not know how to love who we became after. I never thought she was talking about my own daughter. "Hey, you okay?" I looked up. An older man, maybe 70, was standing next to my truck. He wore a Vietnam veteran's cap and walked with a pronounced limp. His face was weathered, sun-damaged, the kind of skin that came from years of outdoor work. "Yeah," I lied. "Just thinking. Mind if I sit?" He gestured to the bench near the entrance. I'm waiting for my ride, and standing gets hard after a while. Took some steel in the leg back in 71. Never quite worked right after that. I got out of my truck and joined him on the bench. We sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the sky turn purple and orange as the sun set behind the mountains. "You look like a man who just lost something," he said finally. "I've seen that look before. Hell, I've worn that look before. My daughter doesn't want me in her life anymore," I heard myself say. I don't even know why I was telling this stranger, but the words just came out. Told me I'm a burden, that I'm traumatizing her kids with my war stories. Kicked me out on Thanksgiving. The old man nodded slowly. Vietnam did that to me too. Came home and nobody knew what to do with me. My wife left, took my son, told me I wasn't the man she married, and she was right. That man died in Da Nang. What came back was somebody else. Did you ever get him back? Your son? Eventually. Took 30 years and him having his own kid, but yeah. We talk now. Not often, but we talk. Sometimes people need distance before they can see clearly. 30 years, I said. I'm 56. I don't have 30 years to wait. Maybe you don't need 30. Maybe you just need the right moment. The old man shifted on the bench. I'm Walter Kovacs, by the way. Friends call me Walt. Jack Brennan. I shook his hand, felt the calluses, the firm grip of a working man. You got somewhere to be for Thanksgiving, Jack? I was planning to microwave a frozen dinner in my apartment and watch whatever football game was on. Walt laughed, a dry, raspy sound. That's a damn depressing plan. Tell you what, my daughter's supposed to pick me up any minute. She's bringing me to dinner at her place in Fountain Hills. She always makes too much food, and she's always telling me to bring friends. Why don't you come? I don't know, I said. I don't want to intrude. Son, you're a veteran sitting alone in a VA parking lot on Thanksgiving. You're not intruding, you're being rescued. There's a difference. Before I could argue, a silver Honda pulled up, and a woman in her 40s got out. She had Walt's eyes, warm and knowing. Dad, you ready? She stopped when she saw me. Oh, sorry, I didn't know you had company. This is Jack Brennan, Walt said. Colonel, retired. Afghan veteran. He's having a rough day, and I invited him to dinner. That okay with you, Marianne? Marianne studied me for a moment, and I saw her taking in the details, the hollow look in my eyes, the way I was holding myself together by a thread. She smiled, and it was genuine. Of course it's okay. We've got plenty of food. Come on, both of you. Tom's probably already carving the turkey. I should have said no. Should have thanked them and gone home. But something in Marianne's smile, in Walt's steady presence, made me say yes instead. Walt's family was nothing like Derek's family. Marianne and her husband Tom lived in a modest ranch house with a view of the mountains. Their 3 kids, teenagers, all of them, were loud and funny and completely comfortable in their own skin. Tom was a high school teacher, coached football, and greeted me with a firm handshake and a genuine smile. Any friend of Walt's is family here, he said. Grab a beer and make yourself comfortable. The house was chaotic in the best way. Marianne's sister was there with her husband and 2 college-age kids. Walt's brother, another Vietnam vet, sat in the corner with a cane and a mischievous grin. Everyone was talking over each other, laughing, arguing about football and politics and what movie to watch later. Nobody asked me about my service. Nobody treated me like I was broken. I was just another person at the table. During dinner, Walt told stories about Vietnam, the funny ones, the ones about pranks they pulled on officers, and the time he accidentally got drunk with a general. His brother chimed in with his own stories, and I found myself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. You were in Afghanistan, right? Marianne's nephew, a kid named Tyler, who was studying history at ASU, asked me. What was it like? And instead of the usual awkward silence that followed that question, everyone at the table leaned in, genuinely interested. So I told them. Not about the trauma, not about the blood and death. I told them about the Afghan kids who used to follow our patrols, begging for candy and soccer balls. About the interpreter who saved my life and who I'd helped bring to the States. About the mountains at sunrise, beautiful and terrible at the same time. My daughter won't let me talk about this stuff around her kids, I admitted. She thinks it's traumatic. Walt shook his head. Kids need to know. Not the worst of it, maybe, but they need to understand what service means, what sacrifice looks like. Otherwise, how do they learn to value it? After dinner, I helped Tom clear the table while Marianne started on dishes. Walt pulled me aside as I was carrying plates to the kitchen. Walk with me, he said. I need to show you something. We went out to his daughter's garage. Walt flipped on the light and I saw what he wanted to show me. The walls were covered with photographs, military photos, family photos, a whole life documented in images. This is me in '69, Walt said, pointing to a picture of a young man in jungle fatigues. This is my unit. Most of these guys didn't make it home. And this, he pointed to another photo, this is me in 2001. 32 years after I got back. That's the first time I smiled in a picture since the war. What changed? I stopped waiting for people to understand me, Walt said. Stopped waiting for my ex-wife to take me back, for my son to forgive me, for the world to make sense again. Started building a new life with the people who actually showed up. Like Marianne. Marianne's your daughter? Biologically, no. I met her father, Tom's dad, in a veterans group in '83. He was Korean War, struggling with his own demons. We became friends. When he died in '98, I stepped in, helped with the funeral, helped Marianne through her grief, walked her down the aisle when she married Tom. She started calling me Dad about 15 years ago, and I never corrected her because, hell, I'm more her father than her biological dad ever was. I stared at the photographs, at the progression from angry young vet to peaceful old man. "Your daughter shut you out today," Walt said. "That's her choice, and it's a damn shame. But it doesn't mean your story's over, Jack. It just means you need to write a new chapter with people who value what you've got to give." Over the next few weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about what Walt said. I kept waiting for Rebecca to call, to apologize, to say she'd made a mistake. But my phone stayed silent. I went to my therapy sessions, did my PTSD exercises, took my medications. But there was a hole in my life where my daughter and grandchildren used to be, and I didn't know how to fill it. Then, 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, Walt called me. "Jack, I need a favor. Can you help me with something this Saturday?" "Of course. What do you need?" "I'm putting together care packages for homeless vets and I could use another set of hands. Marianne usually helps, but she's out of town. You free around 9 in the morning? I'll be there." Walt lived in a small condo in Mesa, the kind of place that was clean but clearly lived in. When I arrived, his living room was filled with boxes, toiletries, socks, granola bars, blankets, handwritten notes. "We're making 100 packages," Walt explained, "going to distribute them around Phoenix this weekend. You ever done anything like this?" "No," I admitted. "Well, you're about to. Grab that box of socks and start assembling." We worked in silence for a while, the rhythm soothing. Then Walt started talking. "After Vietnam, I was homeless for 3 years. Lived under a bridge in San Diego, drank myself stupid, fought anyone who looked at me wrong. One day, another vet found me, guy named James Martinez. He was doing what we're doing now, handing out care packages. He gave me one, and inside was a note that said, 'You're not done yet.' Did that change things for you?" "Not immediately. But James kept coming back. Every week he'd find me under that bridge, bring me food, talk to me. Never judged, never tried to fix me, just showed up. After about 6 months, I let him take me to a shelter. After a year, I got into a treatment program. James saved my life by refusing to let me disappear. Is he still around? Died in 2015. Heart attack. I spoke at his funeral, told everyone there that James Martinez was the reason hundreds of vets were still alive. That his ministry of just showing up had changed the world. We finished the packages by noon. Walt made sandwiches, and we ate on his balcony, looking out over the city. "I want you to consider something, Jack," Walt said. "I'm 73 years old. I've got prostate cancer. Had it for 2 years now. Doctors say I've got maybe another year, 18 months if I'm lucky. And I've been thinking about what happens to this work when I'm gone. Walt, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet. Just listen. I've been doing this homeless vet outreach for 22 years. I've got connections with shelters, with the VA, with churches. I've got a system, and I need someone to take it over when I can't do it anymore. Why me? Because you're at a crossroads, Jack. You can spend the next 30 years waiting for your daughter to come around, getting bitter and angry, or you can do what I did. You can build something new. You can take all that leadership training, all that discipline, all that heart that made you a good officer, and you can use it to help people who actually need it. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Nobody's ever ready. You just start. You show up. You do the work. And somewhere along the way, you realize you're not empty anymore. That Saturday, we drove around Phoenix handing out care packages. Walt knew where all the camps were, which overpasses, which alleys. He knew names, remembered stories. "This is Robert," he'd say, introducing me to a man living in a tent behind a Circle K. He was Army, served in Desert Storm. "Robert, this is Jack." He was a colonel in Afghanistan. Robert's handshake was firm, despite the dirt under his nails. "Thank you for your service, sir." "Thank you for yours," I said back. At each stop, Walt would spend 10 or 15 minutes just talking. "How you doing, Robert? You staying warm? You taking your medications?" And Robert would open up, talk about his struggles, his hopes, his plans. I watched Walt work, and I realized what I was seeing was love in action. Not pity, not charity. Just one human being treating another human being with dignity. By the end of the day, we distributed all 100 packages. "Same time next week?" Walt asked as he dropped me off at my truck. "Same time next week," I agreed. Over the next 3 months, I fell into a rhythm that gave my life structure again. Every Saturday morning at 7, I'd meet Walt at his condo. We'd spend 2 hours assembling care packages while he told me stories about Vietnam, about the men he'd lost, about the 42 years he'd spent learning how to live with what he'd seen. There was this kid in my unit, Walt said one morning. PFC Danny Morrison, 19 years old from Iowa. Kid could fix anything. One day on patrol he steps on a mine. I was 10 feet away. I heard him calling for his mother as he died. Walt's hands never stopped moving as he talked, methodical, practiced. For 30 years I couldn't say his name without having a panic attack. Then one day I'm helping a homeless vet kid about the same age Danny was, and I realized Danny died so I could live. And I'd been wasting that gift, drinking it away. So I started using it instead. Every vet I help, that's me honoring Danny. I understood then what Walt was really teaching me. Not just how to distribute care packages, but how to transform pain into purpose. We'd load up his old pickup and head out to the camps. Walt knew every location, every face, every story. "This is James," he'd say. James was Marines, did 2 tours in Fallujah, got blown up 3 times, got the TBI, came home and couldn't hold a job. VA strung him along for 5 years. By then, he'd lost everything. James shook my hand. "Thank you for your service, Colonel. Just Jack and thank you for yours." Walt would spend 15-20 minutes with each vet, not rushing. He'd ask about their health, their needs, their plans. There was a woman named Angela living in a tent near the Salt River, Army medic from Iraq. She had 3 kids in foster care and a drug problem she was fighting every day. Walt had been visiting her for 6 months. "How you doing this week, Angela?" 11 days clean. "Going to the VA outpatient program every day. My caseworker says if I can make it to 90 days, I might get to see my kids." "That's outstanding. I'm proud of you." After we left, I asked Walt how many times he'd seen Angela relapse. 4 times. But this time feels different. She's fighting for her kids now, not just for herself. What if she relapses again? Then we'll be there when she's ready to try again. That's the job. We don't give up on people just because they give up on themselves sometimes. One Saturday in January, we came across a guy I hadn't seen before. Young, maybe 30, sitting against a wall with a cardboard sign. Walt approached him carefully. "Hey, brother. I'm Walt, this is Jack. We're both vets. Brought you some supplies." "I'm fine," he said. "Don't need charity." "It's not charity. It's brothers, looking out for brothers." "What's your name?" "Kevin." I sat down next to him. "I was in Afghanistan too." "Helmand, Kandahar, Kabul. 23 years in the army. Retired as a colonel last year." Kevin looked at me. "You were an officer?" "Yeah. And 3 months ago, my daughter kicked me out on Thanksgiving. Told me I was a burden. I spent that night in a VA parking lot, wondering if I should just end it." Kevin's eyes widened. "You? Doesn't matter what rank you held. Pain doesn't care about your collar brass, and family can break you no matter how many medals you earned." So over the next few weeks, Kevin was there every Saturday. We'd bring him coffee, food, clean socks. We'd talk about the war, about coming home, about the weight we carried. Then one Saturday, Kevin wasn't there. Someone said he'd gone to the VA, something about trying to get into a program. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. "Colonel, this is Kevin Ramirez. You and Walt gave me those care packages downtown. I'm at the VA. I'm in their residential treatment program." What you said that day about being a colonel and still falling apart, that made me think maybe I could ask for help too. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment and cried, from something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. Then, one Tuesday in early March, Marianne called me at 6 in the morning. "Jack, it's Dad. He's at the hospital. Can you come?" I broke every speed limit getting to Phoenix Memorial. Marianne met me in the waiting room, her eyes red, her husband Tom standing beside her with his arm around her shoulders. "He collapsed this morning," she said. "The cancer spread to his liver. They're saying days, maybe a week. He's been asking for you. Can I see him?" She led me to his room. Walt looked small in that hospital bed, smaller than I'd ever seen him. The machines beeped steadily, monitoring vitals that were slowly failing. His skin had that greyish tint I'd seen before, in forward operating bases in Afghanistan, on men who weren't going to make it. But when he saw me, he smiled. That same warm smile that had greeted me in a parking lot 4 months ago. "Jack," he said, his voice weak but steady. "Glad you're here." I pulled up a chair next to his bed, took his hand. The same hand that had shaken mine on that bench, that had shown me how to pack care packages, that had patted my shoulder after hard conversations with broken vets. I'm not going anywhere, Walt. Good. Because I need to tell you some things, and I don't have a lot of time to say them. Over the next 4 days, I barely left that hospital room. I'd go home at night only when Marianne insisted, shower, change clothes, and come right back. During the day, a constant stream of visitors came through. Veterans Walt had helped over the years, social workers, shelter directors, people whose lives he'd touched in ways large and small. Robert came on the second day, wearing his warehouse uniform, having taken time off work he couldn't really afford to lose. He stood by Walt's bed and cried like a child. "You saved my life, man," Robert said through his tears. "I'd be dead without you. Dead or in prison, or still under that bridge. You gave me back my dignity." Walt's voice was barely a whisper now. "You saved yourself, Robert. I just reminded you that you could." Angela came 11 weeks clean now with her caseworker. She brought a drawing one of her kids had made in foster care. It was a picture of a house with stick figures in front of it. "That's going to be us," she told Walt. "In 3 more weeks, if I stay clean, I get them back. I get my babies back. And it's because you didn't give up on me when I gave up on myself 5 times. Marcus came, the Navy vet from the overpass, wearing slacks and a button-down shirt from his grocery store job. David came, the former Air Force pilot, 18 months sober and steady. Carmen came, the National Guard vet who'd lived in her car, now working security and in her own apartment. They came one after another, and each one told Walt the same thing. "You saved me. You gave me hope. You showed me I still mattered." And Walt, even as he was dying, even as the pain medications made him drift in and out of consciousness, would smile and say the same thing to each of them. "You saved yourself. I just showed up." On the 3rd night, when it was just Walt and me, he opened his eyes and looked at me with unusual clarity. "Jack, I need to tell you something important. My lawyer's coming tomorrow with paperwork. Don't argue with me about this, just listen." "I'm listening. I'm leaving the foundation to you. $360,000 in investments. It generates about $18,000 a year in interest. That's enough to keep the care packages going indefinitely if you're smart about it. I want you to run it, expand it, make it bigger than what I built." "Walt, I can't. This is your life's work." "Exactly," he said. "It's my life's work and I'm dying. If I don't pass it on to someone who understands it, who believes in it, then it dies with me." "Is that what you want?" "No, but there must be someone more qualified. Marianne or one of the social workers, or—" "They have their own work," Walt interrupted, "their own missions. This needs to be yours, Jack. You understand these guys because you are one of these guys. You know what it's like to come home broken. You know what it's like to be discarded by the people who should love you. You know what it's like to wonder if your service mattered. I do know those things. Then use that knowledge. Take what I've built and make it better. Help more vets, create more programs, be the leader I know you can be." "What if I fail?" Walt smiled. "Then you'll fail honorably, trying to help people. That's better than succeeding at something meaningless." "But Jack, you won't fail. I've watched you these past 4 months. You've got the heart for this work. You've got the discipline. You've got the integrity. And most importantly, you've got the understanding of what these men and women are going through." Before I could respond, he closed his eyes. I thought he'd fallen asleep, but then he spoke again, quieter this time. "I'm not afraid of dying, Jack. I made my peace with death in Vietnam, but I was afraid of dying alone, of dying without mattering. You gave me these last 4 months. You made them meaningful. You listened to my stories about Daniel, about Elena, about the men I lost in the war. You cared about an old blind man's memories. You're not just an old blind man, Walt. You're the person who saved me." "No." His eyes opened again, clearer than they'd been in days. "We saved each other. That's how it works, Jack. We're all saving each other, one conversation at a time, one care package at a time, one moment of human dignity at a time." The next morning, Walt's lawyer arrived. Arthur Patterson was a distinguished man in his 70s, carrying a leather briefcase, and the weight of 4 decades of friendship with Walt. He explained the foundation structure, the investments, the annual distributions. Walt had been funding this work for 22 years, living modestly so he could give more to veterans who needed it. "And now," Arthur said, looking at me over his reading glasses, "Mr. Kovacs wants to transfer everything to you, Mr. Brennan. The foundation, the investments, the responsibility of continuing this mission. I looked at Walt, who nodded weakly. "One condition," Walt said. "You change the name. It's not the Kovacs Foundation anymore. Call it the Second Chances Foundation, because that's what we're really doing, giving people second chances." That afternoon I signed the papers. Walt watched from his bed, Marianne holding his hand, tears streaming down her face. "Now it's yours," Walt whispered. "Make me proud." He died the next day, on a Thursday afternoon in March. The cancer had finally won the battle it had been fighting for 2 years. I was reading to him from The Old Man and the Sea, his favorite book. The part where Santiago talks about going out too far, about pushing beyond what was safe and reasonable. Walt smiled at that part like he always did. Then he said, "Thank you, son," and closed his eyes. For a moment, I didn't realize he was gone. His chest just stopped rising. The monitors started beeping. Nurses rushed in. Marianne arrived within minutes, Tom right behind her. But Walt was already gone. Peacefully, without struggle, just like he'd wanted. I sat in that hospital room for an hour after they'd pronounced him dead, after they'd turned off the machines, after Marianne had said her goodbyes and left to call family. "Thank you," I whispered to him. "Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. Thank you for trusting me with this. Thank you for showing me that I still had something to give." I like to think he heard me. The funeral was packed. Veterans from 3 wars, homeless men in donated suits, social workers, volunteers, a line of people whose lives Walt had touched, all there to say goodbye. I gave the eulogy, talked about meeting Walt in that VA parking lot on the worst day of my life, about how he'd taken a broken stranger and given him purpose again, about how his ministry of showing up had saved me the same way it had saved hundreds of others. After the funeral, Marianne pulled me aside. "Dad wanted you to have this," she said, handing me a letter. I opened it later, alone in my apartment. "Jack, if you're reading this, I'm gone, but the work isn't. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to think you're not qualified, not ready, not good enough. Ignore all that. You're exactly who needs to be doing this work. You understand sacrifice. You understand loss. You understand what it means to serve something bigger than yourself. Those homeless vets, they need a leader. Be their leader." And Jack, about Rebecca. "I know it still hurts. I know you think about her every day. But here's what I learned. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes family is the people who show up when blood walks away. You've got family now. Marianne, Tom, the guys we help every week. Don't waste your energy on people who don't see you. Spend it on people who do. One more thing, there's a lockbox in my condo. Combination is your birthday month and day followed by 71, the year I got home from Nam. Inside is something I want you to have. Serve well, my friend. Walter Kovacs." I drove to Walt's condo the next day. Marianne had given me a key. The lockbox was in his bedroom closet, exactly where he'd said. Inside was a purple heart, a bronze star, and an envelope containing $50,000 in cash. The note with it said, "Emergency Fund, for when the foundation money gets tied up in bureaucracy and you need to help someone right now. I've been there. Sometimes you can't wait for paperwork. Sometimes you just need to act. Use it wisely." I sat on Walt's floor and cried. Not from grief, though I felt that too. I cried because this man I'd known for 4 months had trusted me with his life's work, had seen something in me that my own daughter couldn't see. The funeral was held on a Monday morning at the National Memorial Cemetery in Phoenix. Veterans from 3 wars attended. Vietnam vets in their 70s, wearing their unit caps and medals. Iraq and Afghanistan vets, young men and women Walt had helped. Robert stood in the front row wearing a suit Marianne had helped him buy. Angela was there with her 3 children, reunited just a week earlier. Marcus, David, Carmen, dozens of others whose lives Walt had touched. I gave the eulogy, talked about meeting Walt in that VA parking lot on the worst day of my life, about how he'd taken a broken stranger and given him purpose again, about how his ministry of showing up had saved me the same way it had saved hundreds of others. Walt Kovacs was 73 years old, I said. He was a Vietnam veteran who spent 3 years homeless under a bridge in San Diego. He spent the next 40 years making sure other veterans never had to spend 3 days homeless. He didn't do this work because he was perfect. He did it because he was broken and learned how to transform that brokenness into something beautiful. After the funeral, Marianne pulled me aside. "Dad wanted you to have this," she said, handing me a letter. I opened it later, alone in my apartment. Jack, if you're reading this, I'm gone, but the work isn't. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to think you're not qualified, not ready, not good enough. Ignore all that. You're exactly who needs to be doing this work. You understand sacrifice, you understand loss, you understand what it means to serve something bigger than yourself. Those homeless vets, they need a leader. Be their leader. And Jack, about Rebecca, I know it still hurts, I know you think about her every day, but here's what I learned: family isn't always blood. Sometimes family is the people who show up when blood walks away. You've got family now. Marianne, Tom, the guys we help every week. Don't waste your energy on people who don't see you. Spend it on people who do. One more thing, there's a lockbox in my condo. Combination is your birthday month and day, followed by 71, the year I got home from Nam. Inside is something I want you to have. Serve well, my friend. Walter Kovac. I drove to Walt's condo the next day. Marianne had given me a key. The lockbox was in his bedroom closet, exactly where he'd said. Inside was a Purple Heart, a bronze star, and an envelope containing $50,000 in cash. The note with it said, "Emergency fund, for when the foundation money gets tied up in bureaucracy and you need to help someone right now." I've been there. Sometimes you can't wait for paperwork. Sometimes you just need to act. Use it wisely. I sat on Walt's floor and cried, not from grief, though I felt that too. I cried because this man I'd known for 4 months had trusted me with his life's work, had seen something in me that my own daughter couldn't see. Over the next year, I threw myself into the foundation with everything I had. I woke up every morning with a mission, the same way I used to wake up in the army. But this mission was different. This one was about building instead of destroying, about healing instead of fighting. I hired a part-time social worker named Patricia Chen, a woman in her 40s who'd spent 15 years working with homeless populations. She was brilliant, organized, and had connections throughout the Phoenix Social Services Network. Together, we expanded the care package program. We went from distributing 100 packages a month to 400. We added feminine hygiene products for women vets, specialized items for vets with disabilities, warm clothing for winter months. I started working directly with 3 different shelters, building partnerships that Walt had begun, but never fully developed. We created a fast-track program to get vets from the streets into temporary housing within 72 hours, instead of the usual 3-week wait. I used Walt's emergency fund exactly the way he'd intended. When Angela needed money for a certification program that would help her get a better job, I paid for it. $2,000 that the VA would have taken 6 months to approve. When Robert's car broke down, and he was about to lose his warehouse job because he had no transportation, I paid for the repairs. $400. That saved his employment. When Kevin Ramirez, the young vet I'd met downtown, completed his 90-day treatment program and needed first month's rent and deposit for an apartment, I covered it. $1,800, that meant the difference between him having a home or going back to the streets. Every time I used that money, I thought about Walt's words. Sometimes you can't wait for paperwork. Sometimes you just need to act. I met with Robert every week. We'd gotten close over the months, and he'd become my right-hand volunteer. He understood the streets, knew where the camps were, knew which vets needed what kind of help. One Saturday in June, 7 months after Walt died, Robert and I were delivering packages when we found a new guy. He was sitting behind a dumpster near a gas station on McDowell Road, shaking from what I immediately recognized as withdrawal. "Hey, brother," I said, approaching carefully. "I'm Jack, this is Robert. We're both vets. We brought some supplies if you need them." The guy looked up at me with eyes that had seen too much. Looked like he was maybe 40, but the streets aged you fast. Could have been 30, could have been 50. "I don't need your pity," he said. Robert sat down next to him. "Nobody's offering pity, man. We're offering brotherhood. I was where you are 2 years ago, living behind a Circle K, drinking myself to death, thinking I was too far gone to save." The guy looked at Robert. "You got out?" "I got help. From the same people who are standing here offering it to you now." Robert pointed at me. "Colonel Brennan here. He don't look down on nobody. He gets it. He's been there. Different circumstances maybe, but same pain." "What branch?" the guy asked me. "Army. 23 years, 3 tours in Afghanistan. You? Marines? 2 tours Iraq." He wiped his eyes. Name's Thomas. Thomas Garrett. Over the next 3 months, I worked with Thomas personally. Got him into detox, then into treatment, then into transitional housing. He was one of the hard cases, relapsed twice, but we kept showing up. Kept believing in him when he couldn't believe in himself. By September, Thomas was 3 months sober and working as a custodian at a hospital. Not glamorous work, but it was honest, and it paid the bills, and it gave him dignity. The foundation grew in ways I couldn't have imagined. We started getting donations from local businesses. A grocery store chain donated food for our care packages. A clothing company donated socks and underwear. A pharmaceutical company donated over-the-counter medications. Volunteers started showing up. Some were vets themselves, inspired by what we were doing. Others were civilians who just wanted to help. We had retired teachers, accountants, nurses, all giving their time on Saturdays to pack and distribute care packages. I started giving talks at VFW halls, at American Legion posts at churches, telling Walt's story, telling my story, asking for support, for donations, for volunteers, and people responded. By the end of the year, we'd raised over $90,000 in donations. We'd helped 347 veterans. We'd successfully transitioned 73 people from homelessness into stable housing. But more than the numbers, what mattered were the faces. The way Robert's eyes lit up when he talked about his job. The way Angela's kids drew pictures for me every time I saw them. The way Kevin called me every month just to check in, to tell me about his progress, to remind himself that he had people who cared. The way Thomas cried the first time he got a paycheck with his name on it. Legal money earned through honest work after years of scraping by on the streets. Marcus and Vanessa never attended. They'd made their choice clear by not showing up to honor the man who'd changed my life. Rebecca called twice in those 12 months. Short, awkward conversations where she asked if I'd found an apartment yet, if I was doing okay, if I needed anything. I'm fine, I'd tell her. I've got work that matters. People who need me. I didn't tell her about the foundation. Didn't tell her about Walt or the money or the mission that had saved my life. Some part of me wasn't ready to share that part of my life with the daughter who'd rejected me. Then, in December of 2024, 13 months after Walt died, everything changed again. I got a call from an unknown number. Is this Jack Brennan? A woman's voice, professional, measured, speaking. This is Amanda Winters from Desert Horizon Elementary. I'm the school counselor here. Your granddaughter Emma Morrison is in my office. She's having a very difficult day, and she specifically asked if I could call you. Would you be able to come to the school? My heart stopped. Is she hurt? Is she okay? Physically, she's fine. Emotionally, she's struggling quite a bit. She's been talking about you in our sessions for the past several weeks. She says she misses her grandfather and wants to see you. I know this might be an unusual request, but would you be willing to come talk with her? I was already grabbing my keys. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I made it in 15, breaking speed limits I'd never broken, even in emergencies. Desert Horizon Elementary was in Tempe, a good school in a decent neighborhood, the kind of place Rebecca would have chosen for her kids. Ms. Winters met me in the main office. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor that probably made kids feel safe opening up to her. Thank you for coming so quickly, Mr. Brennan. Emma's been having behavioral issues for the past 2 months. Angry outbursts in class, fights with other students, refusing to do her work. Very unlike her usual behavior. In our sessions, she keeps talking about you, about how much she misses you, about how nobody listens to her the way you did. Where is she? In my office, but Mr. Brennan, I need to tell you something first. Your daughter is here too. She's in the parking lot. She gave me your number. She wanted to see if Emma would calm down with you here before she came in herself. Ms. Winters led me down a hallway decorated with children's artwork and motivational posters. We stopped at a door marked Student Services. Emma was sitting in a small chair, her backpack beside her, tears streaming down her face. But when she saw me, her whole face transformed. "Grandpa," she whispered, and then she was running to me, wrapping her arms around my waist, sobbing into my shirt. I held her. This little girl I hadn't seen in over a year. She was so much bigger now, 8 years old, taller, her face losing some of that baby roundness. But she was still my Emma. "Hey, sweetheart," I said softly. I'm here. I'm right here. She cried for a full 5 minutes, just held on to me and cried like her heart was breaking. I looked at Ms. Winters over Emma's head, and she nodded, giving us space. Finally, Emma pulled back, wiping her eyes. I told Mom I wanted to see you. I told her for months and months, but she kept saying you were busy, that you'd moved away, that you weren't available. She lied to me, Grandpa, she lied. I know, honey, I'm sorry. Why did you leave us? Why didn't you call? Carson asks about you all the time. He doesn't understand why Grandpa doesn't come anymore. I didn't leave you, Emma. I wanted to see you, but your Mom and Dad, they asked me not to come around for a while. I had to respect that. But that's not fair, she said, her voice rising. You're my grandpa. You tell the best stories. You listen to me when nobody else does. You don't treat me like I'm stupid just because I'm a kid. You're not stupid, Emma. You're brilliant, and I've missed you so much. We sat together in Ms. Winters' office for another 20 minutes. Emma told me about school, about her little brother Carson, about how her parents had separated, how her dad had moved out, how everything felt broken and wrong. Mom cries all the time, Emma said quietly, and she's always working. And when I try to talk to her, she says she's too tired or too stressed. But you always listened, Grandpa. Always. Ms. Winters knocked softly on the door. Emma, your mom is here. Do you want to see her? Emma looked at me. Will you stay? I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. Rebecca looked like she'd aged 10 years in the 13 months since I'd seen her. Her face was thinner, darker circles under her eyes, her clothes slightly rumpled like she'd gotten dressed in a hurry. When she saw me with Emma, she started crying. Dad, she said, her voice breaking. We stood there in that elementary school office, two adults who used to be everything to each other and had become strangers. Emma's been asking for you every single day for 6 months, Rebecca said. I kept telling her you were busy, that you'd moved away, that you weren't available. But she's so angry with me. Her grades are dropping. She's fighting at school. The counselor said she's showing signs of depression. 8 years old and she's depressed because I kept her away from you. What about Derek? I asked. What about me being a burden? Rebecca flinched. Derek and I separated 4 months ago. Turns out he was cheating on me with his assistant for 2 years. All that talk about needing space, about focusing on our marriage. It was so he could spend more time with her without me questioning it. The down payment I gave you. Gone. Derek convinced me to invest it in one of his real estate deals. The deal fell through. We lost everything. She wiped her eyes. I've got the kids in a rental in Tempe. I'm working 2 jobs, one as a paralegal, one doing bookkeeping on weekends just to keep us afloat. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She wasn't the person who'd kicked me out on Thanksgiving anymore. She was broken, humbled, desperate, and she'd finally realized what she'd lost. I'm not doing this for you, I said quietly, so Emma couldn't hear. I'm doing it for Emma and Carson. They're kids who need their grandfather. I won't punish them, because their mother made bad choices. Thank you, Rebecca whispered. I don't deserve your help, I know that. But thank you. I started seeing Emma every Saturday afternoon. Rebecca would drop her off at my apartment at noon, and we'd spend 4 hours together. I'd help her with homework. We'd go to the park, we'd talk about everything and nothing. She asked about Afghanistan, and I told her age-appropriate truths, about leadership, about making hard choices, about serving something bigger than yourself. I told her about Walt, about meeting him in a parking lot on the worst day of my life, about how he'd taught me that showing up was the most important thing we could do for each other. Can I help? Emma asked one Saturday in January. With the foundation. Can I help you help the veterans? I thought about it. She was 8 years old, but she was also brilliant, empathetic, and needed to feel useful. Yes, I said. You can absolutely help. So Emma started coming with me to make care packages. She'd write notes to put in each one, little messages of encouragement that she'd decorate with drawings and stickers. Thank you for serving our country, one note read. You matter. You're not forgotten. She'd help me pack supplies, counting out socks, toiletries, granola bars. She took the work seriously, understanding that each package was going to a real person who needed it. When we delivered packages, Emma would come with me and Robert. She'd shake hands with the vets, thank them for their service, give them her notes personally. Robert became her favorite. She'd always ask about him, celebrate his small victories with genuine joy. When Robert got promoted to shift supervisor at the warehouse, Emma made him a card with so much glitter that he was finding sparkles on his clothes for weeks. "Mr. Robert," she'd say very seriously, "I'm proud of you. You're doing great things." And Robert, this tough Marine who'd lived on the streets for 2 years, would get teary-eyed every single time. Rebecca saw the change in Emma, saw her daughter becoming confident again, happy again, purposeful again. 6 months into our weekly visits, Rebecca asked if we could talk. Just the two of us. We met at a coffee shop in Tempe, neutral territory. Rebecca looked better than she had at the school, less exhausted, more settled. "I want to apologize," she said. "Really apologize. Not just say the words, but mean them. What I did to you was unforgivable. I chose Derek over you. I chose money and status and the appearance of a perfect life over the father who gave me everything." "Why?" I asked. Not angry, just genuinely curious. "Why did you do it?" "Because I was ashamed," she admitted. "Of you. Of your PTSD. Of your struggles. Derek's family was so successful, so put together, and I wanted to be like them. I wanted to pretend I came from that kind of family, instead of from a single dad who worked 2 jobs and had nightmares." "I see." "Emma told me about the foundation, about Walt, about the work you're doing. Dad, you're helping hundreds of people. You built something meaningful after I threw you away. And I was so busy being ashamed of your struggles that I missed seeing your strength." I sipped my coffee, letting her words settle. "I appreciate the apology, Rebecca. I do. But I need you to understand something. I don't need your approval anymore. I spent months waiting for you to come back to see my value. And then Walt showed me that I didn't need to wait. I could build a life with people who already saw it." "I know," she said. "And I'm not asking to be let back into your life like nothing happened. I'm just asking for a chance to earn your respect again. However long that takes, whatever it takes." We rebuilt our relationship slowly, carefully, like you'd rebuild a house that had burned down. You don't rush it. You check every beam, every foundation, make sure it's solid before you add the next piece. Weekly dinners started in March. Just me, Rebecca, Emma, and Carson. Carson was 6 now and he barely remembered me, but Emma filled him in on all the stories. Told him about Grandpa's work with the veterans, about the care packages, about Mr. Robert and Ms. Angela and all the people we helped. Rebecca would come to these dinners, but kept her distance emotionally. She'd help with cleanup, ask about my week, but she didn't push for more than I was willing to give. She was learning, finally, that relationships were built on respect, not demands. In April, she asked if she could volunteer at the foundation. "Just administrative work," she said. "Filing, organizing, whatever you need. I'm good with spreadsheets and databases. I could help." I thought about it for a week before saying yes. She started coming in on Saturday mornings before I picked up Emma. She'd organize donation records, track volunteer hours, create systems for the chaos that naturally accumulated when you were helping hundreds of people. And she was good at it. Really good. Within 2 months, she'd created a database that tracked every veteran we'd helped, what services they'd received, what their current status was. She'd organized our donor list, set up automatic thank you letters, created financial reports that made it easy to see where our money was going. One Saturday in May, I found her crying in the foundation office. "What's wrong?" I asked. She held up a file. "This is Kevin Ramirez," she said. "The vet you met downtown, the one who called to thank you after he got into treatment. I was entering his information into the database, and I read his story. Dad, he was living on the streets because he had PTSD and couldn't hold a job. Sound familiar?" "Yeah. And you helped him. You got him into treatment, into housing, into a job training program. Now he's employed, housed, stable." She wiped her eyes. "You did for Kevin what I refused to let you do for yourself. I made you feel ashamed of your struggles while you were using those same struggles to help other people." I sat down next to her. "Rebecca, I need to tell you something. When you kicked me out, I was broken. I thought my life was over. But meeting Walt, building this foundation, helping these vets, it gave me something I'd lost: purpose, direction, a reason to wake up every morning. I'm glad," she said. "I really am. But Dad, I robbed you of 18 months with your grandchildren. 18 months of Emma and Carson's lives that you can never get back. How do you forgive that?" "I don't know if I can fully forgive it," I said honestly. But I can choose to move forward anyway. For Emma and Carson, for the chance to rebuild something new with you. Not what we had before, but something different. Maybe something better. 2 years after that Thanksgiving in Scottsdale, I stood in front of 200 people at the Phoenix Convention Center. The foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. We were now helping 500 veterans a year, had partnerships with a dozen shelters, and had successfully housed 73 homeless vets. This award, I said, holding up the Arizona Veteran Service Medal that the governor had just presented to me. This doesn't belong to me, it belongs to Walter Kovach, who started this work 40 years ago under a bridge in San Diego. It belongs to every volunteer who shows up every week to remind veterans that they matter. And it belongs to every veteran who had the courage to accept help and start rebuilding their lives. In the audience, I saw Marianne crying. Next to her, Rebecca sat with Emma and Carson, all three of them clapping. Robert was there in his warehouse uniform, taking a break from his shift to attend. A dozen other vets we'd helped, now housed, employed, healing. After the ceremony, Emma ran up to me. "Grandpa, you're famous now." "I'm not famous, sweetheart. I just show up." "That's what makes you famous," she said with 8-year-old certainty. "You show up when other people don't." Later that night, alone in my apartment, I thought about the journey from that driveway in Scottsdale to here. 2 years that had broken me, rebuilt me, and shown me who I really was. I pulled out Walt's letter and read it again like I did every few months. "Serve well, my friend." "I'm trying, Walt," I whispered to the empty room. "I'm trying." And somewhere I liked to think he was smiling, knowing that his work was continuing, that the broken kernel he'd found in a parking lot had become exactly who he'd needed to be. Not for validation, not for approval, but for the mission, for the vets who needed someone to show up and remind them they still mattered. For Emma, who needed a grandfather who understood that listening was more important than fixing. For Rebecca, who needed to see that redemption was possible if you were willing to do the work. For myself, who needed to learn that my service wasn't over when I took off the uniform, that I still had something to give. I gave my best years to this country, and for a long time I thought my family had given me nothing back. But I was wrong. My daughter gave me the push I needed to find my real purpose. Walt gave me the tools and the mission. Marianne gave me a new kind of family. Emma and Carson gave me a reason to keep going. And all those veterans I helped every week, they gave me something too. They gave me the privilege of serving again, of being useful, of mattering. The privilege of transforming pain into purpose, of taking the worst thing that ever happened to me and using it to help others. That's what Walt had done. That's what I was doing now. That's what every person who'd ever turned their suffering into service had done throughout history. I gave my best years to this country, and my country in its own way gave them back. Not through parades or medals or recognition, through purpose, through mission, through the faces of men and women who went from hopeless to housed because someone showed up and reminded them they mattered. Through the sound of Emma's laugh when she helped pack care packages, through the pride in Robert's voice when he talked about his promotion, through the tears in Angela's eyes when she got her kids back. Through all of it, every moment, every struggle, every small victory, my country gave me back my best years by giving me a reason to keep living them. 2 years after Thanksgiving in Scottsdale, I stood in front of 200 people at the Phoenix Convention Center. The foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. We were now helping 500 veterans a year, had partnerships with a dozen shelters, and had successfully housed 73 homeless vets. "This award," I said, holding up the Arizona Veteran Service Medal that the governor had just presented to me. "This doesn't belong to me. It belongs to Walter Kovach, who started this work 40 years ago under a bridge in San Diego. It belongs to every volunteer who shows up every week to remind veterans that they matter, and it belongs to every veteran who had the courage to accept help and start rebuilding their lives." In the audience, I saw Marianne crying. Next to her, Rebecca sat with Emma and Carson, all three of them clapping. Robert was there in his warehouse uniform, taking a break from his shift to attend. A dozen other vets we'd helped, now housed, employed, healing. After the ceremony, Emma ran up to me. "Grandpa, you're famous now. I'm not famous, sweetheart. I just show up." "That's what makes you famous," she said with 8-year-old certainty. "You show up when other people don't." Later that night, alone in my apartment, I thought about that Thanksgiving 3 years ago, about standing in Rebecca's driveway, broken and lost, about meeting Walt in that parking lot. If someone had told me then that I'd end up here, running a foundation, helping hundreds of people, rebuilding my relationship with my daughter, I would have thought they were crazy. But Walt had seen it, had seen past my brokenness to who I could become. I pulled out my phone and called Rebecca. "Hey, Dad," she answered. "Great speech tonight." "Thanks. Listen, I was thinking, Thanksgiving's coming up. How would you feel about hosting it at my place? I've got room now. Maybe invite Marianne and Tom too. Make it a real family dinner." There was a pause, then Rebecca's voice thick with tears. "I'd love that, Dad. The kids would love that." "Good. Tell Emma she's in charge of centerpieces. And Rebecca, thank you." "For what?" "For coming back. For letting me be a grandfather. For doing the work to rebuild this. Thank you for not giving up on me," she said, "even when I gave up on you." After we hung up, I stood on my balcony looking out at Phoenix. The city lights stretched to the horizon, each one a life, a story, a struggle. I thought about all the Colonel Jack Brennans out there, veterans who'd given everything and come home to find their families didn't know what to do with them, who'd been discarded, forgotten, left behind. That's what the foundation was for. That's what showing up meant. I gave my best years to this country, and for a long time I thought my family had given me nothing back. But I was wrong. My daughter had given me the push I needed to find my real purpose. Walt had given me the tools and the mission. Marianne had given me a new kind of family. Emma and Carson had given me a reason to keep going. And all those veterans I helped every week, they gave me something too. They gave me the privilege of serving again, of being useful, of mattering. I pulled out the letter Walt had left me and read it again like I did every few months. "Serve well, my friend." "I'm trying, Walt," I said to the empty air. "I'm trying." And somewhere, I liked to think he was smiling, knowing that his work was continuing, that the kid he'd found in that parking lot had become exactly who he'd needed to be. Not for his daughter, not for approval or validation, but for the mission. For the vets who needed someone to show up and remind them they still mattered. That Thanksgiving, my apartment was full. Rebecca and the kids, Marianne, Tom and their family, Robert and 3 other vets from our program, volunteers from the foundation. We went around the table saying what we were grateful for. When it got to me, I looked at all these faces, this family I'd built from broken pieces. "I'm grateful," I said, "for second chances, for people who show up, for learning that family isn't always blood. It's the people who choose you when you need it most." Emma raised her glass of apple juice. "To Grandpa Jack," she said, "the man who always shows up." Everyone raised their glasses. "To Jack," they echoed. And sitting there, surrounded by love I'd earned through service and showing up and refusing to quit, I realized something. I'd spent so long thinking I'd lost everything when Rebecca pushed me away, but what I'd actually lost was an illusion. The illusion that I needed her approval to have value. The illusion that family was only the people who shared your blood. What I'd gained was so much bigger. Purpose. Community. The knowledge that my service wasn't over when I took off the uniform. That I still had something to give. I gave my best years to this country. And in return, this country, through people like Walt and Marianne and all those vets I helped, gave me the rest of my life. That's a trade I'd make again in a heartbeat. After dinner, I stood at my window watching everyone leave. Marianne hugged me goodbye. "You're doing Dad proud," she whispered. Rebecca was the last to go, kids already in the car. "Same time next week for Emma?" she asked. "Same time next week." She hesitated, then hugged me. "I love you, Dad. I know I don't say it enough, but I do. I love you too, sweetheart." As she drove away, I thought about the journey from that driveway in Scottsdale to here. 3 years that had broken me, rebuilt me and shown me who I really was. I was Jack Brennan, Colonel retired, PTSD survivor, Foundation president, grandfather, friend. Most importantly, I was someone who showed up. And that, I'd learned from Walt, was the only thing that really mattered in the end. Not the medals, not the rank, not the approval of people who couldn't see your value. Just showing up. For the people who needed you. For the mission that called to you. For the life you were meant to build from the rubble. I gave my best years to this country. And my country, in its own way, gave them back.